this afternoon as well. Government is unveiling some plans to phase out the appointment of head teachers based on the number of years they've served as teachers with the creation of the National Education Institute. Now, according to the Ministry of Education, many student leaders sometimes have close to no training at all for that role, and their decision in turn may collapse the schools and agencies, and that's why Michael Ashale has been monitoring this new reform by the Education Ministry and now reports.
Poor leadership and management, inefficient supervision, lack of accountability, and inadequate teacher training contribute to poor learning outcomes experienced in Ghana's schools.
Acting Chief Director of the Ministry of Education, Divine Ayijo, he reveals that in most cases, teachers who become leaders in educational institutions don't have the requisite training to efficiently handle the associated responsibilities, resulting in bad outcomes.
Many school leaders have not undergone professional preparation for their role beyond their years of experience teaching in the classroom, which impacts children's learning outcomes. The Ministry of Education intends to reform the quality and the pathways into school leadership, from basing the pathway to becoming a head teacher on years of service to enabling earlier career teachers who demonstrate quality teaching and learning and leadership talent to become head teachers sooner.
Mr. Ayijo says the Ministry of Education intends to change that with the introduction of the National Education Institute, which will be responsible for the continuous training of all who wish to become heads of institutions.
The Ministry of Education plans to set up a National Education Institute as a permanent institution dedicated to educational leadership training for the ministry to offer long-term, tailor-made leadership programs with certification for current and aspiring school heads and staff of agencies of the Ministry of Education.
Dr. Charles Yeboah, the Executive Director of the Association of Supervisors and Curriculum Development, says the program targets some 70,000 educational leaders and expects to train 25% of them by 2026.
So from the ministry, we know that about 70,000 people that will have to be trained over time, right? We are starting with, but by 2025, the ministry and the minister's vision is that by 2025, 25% of that number has gone through some training. We want to make it as practical and as impactful as possible, So we want to make it as impactful and practical as possible. So the whole idea is that by 2025, 25% of the 70,000 people being targeted across the country in various areas of education leadership have been reached.
Director General of the Institute for Educational Planning and Administration at the University of Cape Coast, Dr. Michael Boachi Yadom, cautioned that the project will only make an impact if it is sustained.
Sustainability. We must ensure that the program is sustainable. If the first few years are funded externally, for instance, we must have a financial sustainability plan so that if the funding expires in 2 years or in 3 years, for instance, then we don't throw away work done within that 2 or 3 years. So financial sustainability is important. In terms of legislation, we must have something in place that will ensure continuity. In terms of policy, we must have something in place to ensure continuity so that we don't waste resources, we don't spend resources on a particular program for 2-3 years and then come back and say Government A or Minister B doesn't want us to continue and we should throw it away.
The ministry hopes to pilot the program come January 2023 with support from Jacobs Foundation and Big Win Philanthropy. For Joy News, Michael Ashale.
Okay, then let's expand the conversation on this. Dr. Charles Yeboah is Executive Director for the Association of Supervisors and Curriculum Development. Dr. Jill Harrison-Berg is a US-based educationist. Thank you all for joining us. Dr. Jill, well, your system may be used to this, but how practical will this be in terms of implementation in countries such as Africa, specifically Ghana?
Well, thank you for having me. I just want to say that I've had a chance to meet some of the leaders of these different agencies, institutions, education partners, And I'm seeing so many strengths, so many good ideas, so much capacity. But one of the things that this project aims to achieve is the opportunity to knit those together, to support those agencies and institutions to lead in sync instead of inadvertently against each other. You know, there's many great ways to improve a school or to improve a school district or to improve a system. But if each of those agencies has its own vision and approach, you know, without ill intent, there's an inefficiency there. And so what was so exciting this week with the stakeholder summit was the opportunity to bring so many different voices together in conversation from across these agencies and institutions. And I think that's what it really takes to see success.
And what will be that central role of the Education Institute?
Well, the central role of the Education Institute will be, Educational Leadership Institute, right, will be to bring folks together in vertical teams so that the head teachers, the regional and district teachers, the tertiary leaders, as well as national agency leaders who are working together will engage in professional learning together, engage in inquiry where they're studying the problems of practice within their system and solving problems together, so that they're not only building their capacity with new leadership content, but they're also learning about new ways of working together.
And Dr. Charles, for your colleagues, and I'm sure that you've been getting some reaction ever since this announcement, would you say that our systems are in place and that the teachers themselves and head teachers within the Ghanaian system are ready enough to take up this new reform?
Yes, and I can say that on authority, that this is probably the first time that the ministry, through the vision of the minister, convene people from the various agencies and from all the educational ecosystem in one place under one roof to really deliberate on this. And the consensus in the room, the 2 days that we met at AH Hotel, was that Ghana needs this. The teachers said they need this. The university's rep said that we need this. The heads of schools said they need this. The agencies and secondary heads said that they need this. So, you know, as you know, over the years, as was alluded to, people have gone into leadership basically by virtue of how long, you know, they have served in the system with no requisite training. And so people don't really know how to bring about transformation in their schools because they really don't know how to do it. But for the first time, I mean, the ministry is really talking about how do you ensure that leadership is in place. And there was definitely no debate that leadership matters and educational leadership for that matter is important.
But by rolling out this initiative, the belief is that you're casting virtually a vote of no confidence on the existing head teachers in public schools across the country, right?
That is not the case. And we want to make sure that everybody can improve. Every system can improve. Even the systems overseas, and I'm sure Dr. Bell can speak to that, that even the systems in the US, the systems in, and I'll tell you, I operate private schools. So I'm the founder, co-founder and director of international community schools across, the country, where, we have raised millions of dollars and invested millions of dollars across the country. Even within the private sector, leadership is not there for a lot of us, that come into leadership. All start schools and want to have head teachers. There is no pipeline in our education system today, where you can draw leadership from, right? So whether in the private sector or public sector, this is the new thing. It doesn't mean that progress is not being made. It doesn't mean that children are not learning. What it means is that what can we do to make sure we can take education to a total different level.
So under this new arrangement, are the opportunities or the doors closed to pre-existing head teachers who still want to retain their schools? Are you getting completely new ones who will be trained by the National Education Institute?
No. So what it is that the people, this project targets existing and aspiring school leaders. When the Director General of Ghana Education Service spoke, he made it clear, at the summit, teachers are retiring. I mean, heads of schools are retiring every time. And it is difficult to catch up in terms of their preparation or take over. Every day somebody retires from, primary school as a head or secondary school as a head. So the whole idea is to target those that are leading schools now and those that are like to take over from them, as well as all the agency leaders, to make sure that we have a pipeline of leaders, now and in the future. So the people that are already in leadership today are not losing their roles. They are just being trained and equipped to lead better. That is what this is about.
Okay, then, Dr. Beck, let's talk about the long-term effects of rolling out this policy.
Right, the long-term, I think that's where the payoff is. I think while there will be a short-term effect, the long-term effect is that this is a systemic approach, right? It's this notion that this isn't the fault of one head teacher or one particular division. It's that we need to improve the coordination among them so that in the long term, what we'll be seeing is the opportunity for a system that really produces excellence for each and every student. Of course, right now you have pockets of excellence and islands of excellence and certain individuals in schools, but how can we ensure that our system is designed to produce excellence for each and every student? That doesn't come from reforming one head teacher or replacing one division head. That comes from retraining the system and changing the routines that are a part of the way schools work.
How unique will the program be to Ghana? Because we know that there are varied forms and variants, if I should call them that way, of such policies in parts of East Africa and elsewhere where these policies are being practiced. So what would you say about the Ghanaian context? How unique will this be?
Well, I think what's so interesting about the Ghanaian context is you have such a greater variety of schools. We have a strong network of technical and vocational schools, boarding schools. The public and private schools have an interesting relationship here. And so it really all points to this notion that it's a system. And I think that's something that the minister's really got to be commended on, is recognizing that the problem is the system and the way it's currently networked. The problem's not an individual or one particular role. It's a systemic approach that's needed, and that's what he's invested in here.
Are we looking at any direct bearing on improving teaching and learning in schools once this program takes off?
Oh, absolutely. I think that obviously the goal at the end of the day is to support individual students. We know we've seen statistics that half of students who are 10 years old are still not learning to read. So at the end of the day, we expect to see those individual learning outcomes. But currently, schools don't have the conditions that are needed for effective teaching and learning. And again, it's because of conditions within the system that we aim to improve by aligning those systems.
Dr. Beck, thank you. Let me wrap up with you, Dr. Charles, and on the way forward and what your message will be to teachers or head teachers out there.
We're excited, that we can help facilitate this. As somebody has said, everything rises and falls on leadership. We think if we have strong leadership, in place in our schools, within the agencies, we would see progress. So already we've seen, a buy-in and interest, from the various stakeholders that we put together, about 66 people drawn from all the various educational ecosystem. People understand there's a real need. We just pitched this even to the Ministerial Advisory Board, here at Lisa Hotel, and everybody is very excited about where this is going. So we're going to begin with a pilot of 300 in January after the curriculum has been developed, and then there will be training of facilitators. And one of the things that we want to do that is very different is that we are using train-the-trainers model, recruiting the heads who go through this training from within the system. So that when the consultants' work is over, their work continues, because the people that are going to deliver it in the future are all built within the system. Instead of a situation where your consultants in, they train, and then nothing happens, and then you have to bring them in. This time, the whole approach will be to train people within the system who can deliver and continue the work when the consultancy work is over.
Let's leave it here for now, but we'll definitely get back to this once it unfolds. I'm grateful for your time here on The Pulse of the Sun.